Now, believe it or not, we're in our 25th message in the book of 1 Samuel, okay? And we started this back in February, and we said that we were going to learn some good lessons and some bad lessons. And if you haven't been here, that's okay. Basically, the gist of what's going on is Saul is on his way out as king, and David is on his way in, and we're in that transition period. And right now, Saul is chasing David all over the countryside. He's jealous of David, and he wants to kill him. Let's be honest. He just wants to get rid of him because he's the competition. And so that's kind of where we're at in this passage. And I've entitled the message this morning, An Eye for an Eye. Okay? Now, what do you think of when I say an eye for an eye? What do you think of, young man?
Someone kills someone and then the family comes kill them.
Ooh, that's like a good movie, okay? Mom's going, where did you see that at? Yeah, but he gave us a really good definition. Somebody kills somebody in my family, and we go kill somebody in their family, right? Okay, but that's only in the movies. Okay, we don't do that for real life, all right? All right, so what else? This whole topic of an eye for an eye. Revenge. You know, and it is, can I say this? An eye for an eye, it actually comes out of the Bible. Okay, it says an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, a burn for a burn, a scar for a scar. I mean, in the Old Testament, when God gave Moses the law, this was kind of what happened. You steal from me, and it allowed me to steal from you. Okay, and this whole thing about taking revenge and taking things into our own hand. Lots to talk about this morning, so we're going to see that. So let me just let's ask ourselves a question. What do you think about when you think of the topic of revenge? Getting even, okay? Yeah, I don't say I don't get even, I get ahead, all right? Yeah, okay, so what else? Getting even? Come on, Randy, what do you think of when you think of revenge? I know that you're probably thinking right along the same lines that, we're not supposed to take revenge, but what do you think about when you think about revenge? Oh, gosh, now what? Okay, what, Kim? Forgiveness. You think forgiveness? You're way up here, I'm way down here, okay? Yeah. Yes, sir. What's that? Best served cold. I got it. Yeah. Yeah. You and I need to get together later. Okay. All right. Yes? Oh, making them feel worse than you feel. Okay. Because that's what revenge is, right? Somebody wronged you. We don't take revenge for no reason, right? Well, I hope. Okay. When we take revenge, it's because someone wronged us. Somebody did something against us. And now it's time to pay them back. Okay? To pay them back, and sometimes you want to pay them back as much as they hurt you. And those are real feelings, by the way. Okay, they're real feelings. What else? Anybody else thinking anything? Best served cold. I like that. Uh-oh, be careful. You better check with your mom first, okay? All right. Anger. Yeah, we get pretty upset, don't we? Especially when people do things against us, we get mad, we get angry. Want to pay them back. Want to get even. Well, we're going to see a story this morning about taking revenge. And now, let's make the question a little bit more personal, okay? Let's pop this one up here and see what we think. How much time do you think you spend per day thinking about revenge? None, you say. I wish I could get to that point. Think about that. How much time? Because, see, the reason I asked this question is obviously because, when I went and I started to look, in 2013, they did a study, the American Psychology Study, they did a study on it. And they say that adults, okay, which is most of us in the room, spend the great majority of their day thinking about revenge. I didn't say enacting revenge, thinking about revenge. And this is why. You've all been there, and I'm sure you've all seen this. What happens when somebody gets promoted over you and you know you're just as good or not better than they are? Do you ever think that why did they get that and you didn't? And what could I do to that person because I didn't get what was coming to me and they got it over me? Oh, no, you probably don't think that way. Only the pastor does, okay? Maybe somebody cuts you off, and I know that we have some road rage monsters in the room that I will not name by name, but somebody cuts you off, and what do you want to do? I know what I want to do. I want to pass them, and then I want to get right there, and then I want to slam on my brakes right in front of them and hope that they rear end me because they'll be at fault. But what about some real things here? What about your best friend when they betray you? Oh, but you never thought about revenge, right? We never think about revenge when that best friend betrays your confidence and you're thinking about, how could they do that to me? And may 1,000 sand fleas infest their bed. I think about those things. Now, I didn't go buy 1,000 sand fleas, but I think about it a lot. And then what about, let's even make it a little bit more personal. You've been married for 15 or 20 years, or she walks out and leaves you with the bills, the kids, and whatever. And you're thinking about, how could that person do that to me? And may they find somebody 5 times worse than me. Revenge. So we probably, if we really sit down to think about it, we probably do think about it. And I hate to say this, sometimes when it becomes such an issue, it consumes you. And the only thing you can think about is that person and what they've done to you and paying them back and getting even with them and maybe hoping that something happens to them along the way. See, I think we probably spend a little bit more time thinking about it than we give ourselves credit for. I didn't say that you went out and did it, but I'm saying that we consume ourselves with the thought of going out and doing it. So this morning, we're going to look at David. And let me tell you something. If there was a guy that was justifiably, had the right to seek revenge, it would have been David. Remember where we're at. Saul is chasing David all over the countryside. We're going to see that all over oblivion out there, and he's not doing it just for a day or two. He's been on the warpath with David for weeks and months and miles. He's been pursuing David for the purpose of not wishing him a good day, but to kill him, to pin him up against a cave wall and do away with the competition. See, Saul, he definitely wants to take vengeance into his own hands. And if there was ever a person who had the right to defend himself, it would have been David. David didn't do anything wrong. David wasn't egging Saul on. David had the right to pick up a spear when he given the chance and probably just take it right through the chest of Saul and say, man, that's for treating me like trash. I've lost my family, I've lost my best friend, I've lost my wife, you're chasing me all over the place, and I didn't do a dang thing wrong. See, David had a reason to take revenge out on Saul. The Bible does talk about it, and we're probably familiar with these couple verses in the New Testament. Look, it says, you've heard it said, and these are Jesus. This is Jesus speaking. Jesus knew the Old Testament, by the way. He knew that Moses was told an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth and a scar for a scar and a burn for a burn. Jesus was very much aware of the Old Testament scriptures. Eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. But I say to you, do not resist an evil person, but whoever slaps you on the right cheek, turn to him the other one. That's our attitude, right? I know, that's me. Yeah, do me some wrong. Here, let me turn the other cheek so you can do it to me again, right? That's probably not my thought process, to be honest with you. And then Paul, he takes this whole thing of Jesus and he kind of goes even to another extreme and he says, never take revenge, but leave room for the wrath of God, for it is written. This is the part we Christians know, right? We know this part. It says, vengeance is mine, I will repay, says the Lord. Maybe sometimes we would prefer that vengeance is mine, saith Bob, okay? But look what Paul, he says, look what he said. He says, but if your enemy is hungry, what are you supposed to do? Feed them. If they're thirsty, you're supposed to, something to drink. And in doing so, you will heap burning coals on his head. Now, we're going to come back to that in a second. Do not overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. It says, hey, you want to treat your enemy differently. If you know that we're supposed to give them something to eat and something to drink. And then I like this. Now be careful. It says in doing so, you heap burning coals. Now, if your whole motivation is to just be nice to them so that, yeah, I know that just burns you, doesn't it, when I'm nice to you? That's revenge all by itself. I have to be really careful about this, okay? But we're not supposed to take vengeance. We're supposed to love people like Jesus loved people. All kinds of different people. People who disagreed with you, people you had arguments with, people who did wrong to you. Overcome evil with good. Man, that's a tough model to follow. So let's look in our Bible. We finished up chapter 23, and we're going to pick up about midway in 23. And I want to pick up with verse 14, and this is the one Augie ended with last week. And I want to come back to this one. It says that David was in the wilderness in the strongholds. Remember? He's hiding from King Saul. And says, as he remained in the hill country in the wilderness of Ziph, and Saul sought him every day. Now think about that. Every day, Saul is on the warpath for David. Every single day. And if you remember from the text last week, he has dedicated his entire army to find David. He's consumed. We said it last week. We said it the week before. Saul, he's gone loony. Okay, he's crazy. He is consumed with jealousy and revenge and all these different things every day. And I love, and I put it in red, the buts of the Bible. We talk about them frequently here. But God did not deliver him into his hand. It wasn't that Saul was a horrible person at finding people. He's got thousands of people out there looking for him. And it's not that David is such a great hider. You know, when you play hide and seek, and you can never find that one person because they always have the best hiding place. That's not David. This is God at work. This is God keeping David out of Saul's hands. We're going to come back to that later on in our discussion. So let's pick up in our text this morning, going on in the story. We're only going to look at a couple verses in chapter 23, and we're going to concentrate on 24. It says, David became aware that Saul had come out to seek him and to seek his life while David was in the wilderness of Ziph at Horish. Jonathan, Saul's son, arose and went to David at Horish and encouraged him in God. Isn't it amazing, by the way, that Saul can't find David, but Saul's son can find him? Must be a God thing. And he said to him, do not be afraid, because the hand of Saul my father will not find you, and you will be king over Israel, and I will be next to you, and Saul my father knows that also. We've been talking about this for weeks. Jonathan knows what's going to happen. David is going to be the next king. And he understands what's going to happen in the process. And through the rest of chapter 23, you have Saul chasing David all over the place. We'll see that here in a second. And it comes to a point now that they've been playing this cat and mouse now for weeks and months. David's here, then he's gone. Saul finds him, and then David moves on. They've been doing this for weeks and months. And look what it says. It says, then one day, Saul was on one side of the mountain, and David and his men were on the other side of the mountain. David was hurrying to get away from Saul, for Saul and his men were surrounding David and his men to seize them. Finally, Saul and all of his entire army has finally got David surrounded. And then there's another but. But a messenger came to Saul saying, hurry and come, for the Philistines have made a raid on the land. Now, there are a lot of things that King Saul should have been doing. He should have been back where his palace was. He should have been ruling and doing all kinds of things. But he's consumed with finding David. And he finally has David surrounded. And maybe it's by circumstances or coincidence or by chance, whatever you want to say, the Philistines attack, or maybe it's God. But the Philistines, the enemy of Israel, come into the land, and now King Saul has to turn away from going after David and turn to the Philistines. It's God at work in all of this. Let me show you a picture here. And I know you can't see it too well, but up on the U version, if you look under events, you'll see this map a lot closer. But I wanted to show this to you because this is so interesting to me. This is the cat and mouse game I'm talking about. Up here, if you look up here, this is Ramah. And this is where when David leaves Saul's household, he goes to Samuel, okay, at Ramah. And then down here you see where he goes to Nob. All right, and this is where he gets Goliath's sword. We talked about this a couple weeks ago. He eats the showbread. And then I want to show you this. Look what happens. And all through the things that Pastor Augie and I have been talking about over the last several weeks, David takes a little trip and he comes out here to Gath and to the caves at Adullam. Remember we wrote that psalm? And then he brings his parents all the way down here to Mizpah over in Moab. And then he comes back, and he's being pursued by Saul all the time until we get to last week's story where he was at Keilah, where the priests were slain. And now he's over here in En-Gedi. And the reason I put that up to you is I wanted to show you Saul is in pursuit of David, and I put my little string together and my little map out there together. He's been pursuing him for over 400 miles. This guy is consumed with jealousy and rage and his perceived revenge. He is going to get David if it costs him everything. Now, we think 400 miles, well, that's like to San Diego and back, right? Or if you like to go the other way, Phoenix and back. But think about that. There ain't no Toyota Tacomas or Toyota Camrys, or it's no Nikes, by the way, no Adidas. It's sandals and feet and chasing after people in the desert. That's a hard desert if you've not been there. Pursuing him for revenge. 400 miles. That's a pretty sick individual, by the way. So jump with me now into chapter 24 when we're going to see what happens between David and Saul. It says in the last verses, it says Saul returned for pursuing David, and as soon as he's done with the Philistines, he goes right back after David. I mean, he's not worried about the people. He's not worried about food. He's only concerned about one thing. I'm going to find David. Chapter 24. David is going to be in the caves of En-Gedi. And these are some pictures of some caves at En-Gedi. And if you've ever been there, there's been a few of us that got over to Israel, and you see these caves all over the mountainside. And these are maybe some of the same caves that David hid in, who knows? But the mountainside is full of these different caves. In chapter 24, David finds himself in one of those caves, and he says, Saul returned from pursuing the Philistines. He was told, saying, David is in the wilderness of En-Gedi, and Saul took 3,000 chosen men, the best of the best. Maybe he took Marine Recon Army, the Army Rangers and the Navy SEALs, and he says, let's take these 3,000 guys, and we're going to go, and we are finally going to find him. And they went out to seek David. And they went to where the rocks of the wild goats were located. And look what happens now. He came to the sheepfolds on the way where there was a cave, and Saul went in to relieve himself. Let me translate that for you. He had to go to the bathroom. Okay, how's that? All right. That's what he did. When nature calls, you got to go. And he goes into a cave to relieve himself. But look who might be in the cave as we go. It says, David and his men were sitting in the inner recesses of the cave. And the men of David said to him, Behold, this is the day of which the Lord said to you, Behold, I am about to give you your enemy into your hand, and you shall do to him as it seems good to you. And David arose and cut the edge of Saul's robe secretly. Now, picture this. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of caves in En-Gedi. David's hiding in one. Him and his men. Remember the kind of the despondence of Israel. And all of a sudden, by chance, maybe by coincidence, Randy, Saul walks into the cave. He has to go to the bathroom. What are the chances? And Saul's men, right away, this is God at work, right? This is God at work. There he is, the king, and he's disposed. And if there was ever a person who deserved a spear in the middle of his chest, it was probably King Saul. I mean, it would have been a blessing to the people to get rid of this madman, to find a king that would maybe be after God's own heart, a king that would serve the people, and get rid of this clown that's the king now. This is your chance. You remember last week, Augie was talking about circumstances and how we can use circumstances to help understand where God is leading us sometimes? And then he also said, be careful of using circumstances alone because circumstances can be misleading. There he is. It's King Saul. He's disposed. He's preoccupied. This is the perfect opportunity because look, when you're disposed, I'm sure King Saul did not bring in 1,000 of his bodyguards to watch him to go to the bathroom. He went by himself. He's there, and David has opportunity now to either cut his throat or slide a spear into his side and make sure that this guy doesn't get out of the cave. And that's exactly what his men are telling him to do. Be careful. Circumstances look like they're all aligned, right? And didn't Augie last week say that we got to make sure that circumstances always line up with the Word of God? Because if we rely on circumstances alone, we can be misled. Because circumstances would say, David, here's your chance. Well, David does go and he slices off the corner of Saul's robe. A tassel, you might want to call it. Let's see what happens. Came about afterward that David's conscience bothered him because he had cut the edge of Saul's robe. Now, wait a second. I am so glad that David didn't stick a spear into Saul's side because I wonder what his conscience would have done to him then. All he did now was just cut off the slice of his robe. Look what happens. He says, far be it from me because of the Lord that I should do this thing to my Lord, the Lord's anointed, to stretch out my hand against him, since he is the Lord's anointed. David persuaded his men with these words and did not allow them to rise up against Saul. And Saul arose and left the cave and went on his way. So let me ask you just kind of a general question. Why do you think David didn't take revenge on Saul? What do you think? Why do you think that David didn't, do what his people told him to do?
Saul was still anointed by God.
That's why he wasn't even wanting God to go ahead and take Saul's life.
Oh, okay. Debbie, you bring up a really good point. And for those of you that missed it, Debbie said, and I'm not sure how I'm going to put that on the board, but nowhere in Scripture do we have it recorded anywhere that David was commanded by God to take Saul's life, to take revenge, to take matters into his own hands. He was never told, go execute judgment on King Saul. So that's good. And then you said down here that Saul was anointed by God. Even though, now, careful, because he was anointed to be king and God did withdraw his presence from him, but he was still the anointed king of Israel. And I think that plays into it. What else? What else do you think that, maybe he didn't do? He would have acted on emotion. He didn't. Yeah, because everything inside of him, and you've been there, right? Somebody does, you're emotionally, and I'm going to tell you something, when our emotions get up, we don't tend to make the best decisions. We don't. I'm glad he didn't act on emotion. Thank you, Lori. Why, he's going to the bathroom? It's a good movie, right? Yeah, it's a good plot, okay, but yeah. There you are on the back. No, okay, I got lots of things I could say, but we're not going to go there. Yeah. I was just, I agree with you. It's like the black widow that's underneath the, the toilet bowl that you don't know that's there. It's a bad way to get a spider bite. Yeah, God does call him a man after his own heart, right? Okay, Liz?
We still believe that Saul was his king.
He did. But he felt he was the king. Justin? Yeah, I never thought about that. That's excellent. He would have, killed his best friend's father. And you know what? I don't know how solid their relationship is. It's a good relationship according to what the Bible says, but that would probably change the relationship a little bit. Never thought about it. Good point, Justin. What's that? Oh, excellent point. Matter of fact, if you've been here the last several weeks, if he had actually killed him, it would have done exactly what Saul was anticipating David to do in his own mind. Excellent point. Others, you guys are like way ahead of first service, like they were like sleepy, Liz? He did. Well, don't leave us hanging. Okay. Any other thoughts on why maybe David did not take revenge? Excellent. You guys did a good job with that. And this is the conversation. Now watch what he says. He says, therefore David arose and went out of the cave and called after Saul, my lord the king. When Saul looked behind him, David bowed with his face to the ground and prostrated himself. And David said to Saul, why do you listen to the words of men, saying, behold, David seeks to harm you? I love this, okay? David's attitude, and you all got this, David's attitude is not a person that's out to pay Saul back for the mistreatment of Saul. Matter of fact, look at his attitude here. When he could have been boastful, he could have been proud, he could have done all kinds of things. Where does David find himself but on his face? That's what it means. To be prostrated means to lay down on the ground, face to the ground. Now, is this a guy that's out there trying to seek revenge against Saul? No. Talked about this in first service, and because it's natural, I'm going to tell you, trying to get even or ahead of somebody is a natural thing, and maybe it can change our heart the way we perceive it when we have that feeling of wanting to get even and paying somebody out to get prostrate in front of them instead. Wouldn't that change your mindset? The passage and conversation goes on. It says, the days your eyes have seen that the Lord have given you today into my hand in the cave. And some said to kill you. But my eye had pity on you. And I said, I will not stretch out my hand against my Lord. For he is the Lord's anointed. And you guys caught that. Now, my father, remember it was Saul who brought David in and treated him like his own son. Now, my father, indeed see the edge of your robe in my hand, for in that I did not cut the edge of your robe and did not kill you. Know and perceive that there is no evil or rebellion in my hands, and I have not sinned against you, though you are lying in wait for my life to take it. Why are you believing everybody out there that says that I'm out here to kill you? If it was true, I would have done it. May the Lord judge between you and me, and may the Lord avenge me on you, but my hand shall not be against you. You can throw another spear at me, and I still will not raise my hand against you. As a proverb of the ancients says, out of the wicked comes forth wickedness. Thank you, Liz, but my hand shall not be against you. After whom has the king of Israel come out? He says, who are you looking for? Whom are you pursuing? A dead dog? That's what David feels like he is in Saul's eye. Am I a single flea? The Lord therefore be judge and decide between you and me, and may he see and plead my cause and deliver me from your hand. That's a whole lot different than revenge, isn't it? And I'm saying David had every justifiable reason to go after Saul, and he did not. Well, let's see Saul's response. David finished speaking these words to Saul, and Saul said, "Is this your voice, my son David?" Saul lifted up his voice and wept, and he said to David, "You are more righteous than I, for you have dealt well with me, while I have dealt wickedly with you. You have declared today that you have done good to me, and the Lord delivered me into your hand, and yet you did not kill me. For if a man finds his enemy, will he let him go away safely?" This is Saul processing this whole thing and working through, hey, if he's my enemy, will he let me go away safe? May the Lord therefore reward you with good in return for what you have done to me this day. Now behold, I know that you will surely be king, and the kingdom of Israel will be established in your hand. Saul recognizes who the next king of Israel will be. And he says, "Swear to me," and we've already heard this, right? "Swear to me by the Lord that you will not cut off my descendants after me, and you will not destroy my name from my father's household." And David swore to Saul. And we know that this will be true. We'll find Mephibosheth later on, come back in the story in 2 Samuel. And Saul went to his home, and David and his men went up to the stronghold. I like this. David pleads his case, and Saul has a great, change of heart, right? "Oh, David, you're right. I'm so bad, and you're so right. Forgive me." And this all sounds good, right? For 2 chapters. Next week, we won't hear too much about Saul, but the following week, we'll come back, and it will be again Saul chasing after David, not to wish him a good day, but to kill him. So you know what comes next, right? So what? Augie asks, "What's this mean to you?" So what? What does this mean? How do we take this passage and put it into practice in our life today? Because I believe that there are people sitting in this room that revenge. You've either been a victim of it or you've been the perpetrator of it. What does it mean to us this morning? Now, if you don't say anything, I've got like 12 extra things up here to talk about. Give it to God. Yeah, somebody said that in first service. I'm so good at doing that, by the way. I do. I give it to God, and then about 5 seconds later, I give it back to myself and take it back. It's hard to give it back to God. It does. And I will tell you, it can change you and make you a very bitter person. Yeah.
Make it right. Whatever somebody has done to wrong you, but being able to accept it, remember it without anger.
And along those lines, I was thinking about this. We have to expect that we're going to get wronged. Isn't that a sad way to live our life? Because you're just probably right now you're in the safety of church, and be careful because it can happen at church too. But let me tell you something: you're going to get wronged. If you go out today, somebody's likely to do something, and you're likely to think, "Man, I hope there's a cop right around the street right there, and he pulls you over and gives you exactly what you deserve." You're going to get wronged because we live in a very sinful world, a fallen world with fallen people. I'm going to tell you, it's going to happen. Question is, you're going to get those feelings. You are, because you've been trained. We've all been trained to look out for number one. And that there's nobody more important than you. And when somebody messes with you, you're going to want to get even. And like Kim said, how do you leave it with God? Because he is the one that says, "Vengeance is mine, saith the Lord." And it's his vengeance. It may not even be your vengeance. It's his vengeance. It's a difficult one, and maybe getting on our face before God is a great start, just like David did, being prostrate before the Lord, saying, Lord, I'm having these horrible feelings about this person or that event or whatever it is, and getting on your face before God and letting him know your heart. And then every time, trust me, every time, and I wish I could say that you could get prostrate on the and it's all going to go away, but it doesn't, okay? It's going to come back, and you have to be able to stop that thought in its track and say, wait a minute, I have released that to God. And our adversary out there, he's real good about wanting to bring it back up because he knows how consuming it can be in your life. I thought about these other three things too this morning. You know, God's the architect of your life. Every single detail. See, you can sit here today and you can go, you know, it was only by chance that, you know, Saul walked into the same cave that David was in. It was only by chance when David was surrounded by Saul that the Philistines attacked. It was all by, let me tell you something, God is the architect of your life. Every single detail. We got an exciting announcement coming up in our church about our building program, and our architect is busy drawing up the final plans for what's going to be shared and everything else of that nature. But he has got every detail. He has mechanical engineers, he has electrical engineers, he has structural engineers. They draw in these plans where every single light socket's going to be, how wires are going to go across the building and down a wall, and where the beams are going to be to make sure that the roof doesn't fall in and all. He has every single detail in those plans. Now, we can go out and we can hire a contractor, right? And they're supposed to be able to take those plans and they're supposed to build this building in a way that those plans say. And the contractor does not have permission to go away from the plans. He can't go, you know what, I think I'll put the beam 5 feet to the left because I like it 5 feet to the left more than what the architect or what the structural engineer said, because you know why? If he does that, the roof could fall in. And we do that, and we don't understand that God is our architect, and every detail is mapped out, and when we choose to do it our way over his way, there are some serious consequences and events that can happen. Look at this next one. It says those decision moments, whether I stick him in the gut with a spear or I get prostrate on the ground, those are what I call important decision moments. And they're crucial. And they can change someone's life, and they can change your life forever. Our worship team's going to come up as I make this last point, and then we're going to sing, and then I want to come up and say one more thing as we kind of close. Look at this last one, because this is the one that's kind of difficult. Submission to human authority is not based upon respect for the person. Yes, ma'am. Yes. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's awesome. I'm sorry to hear that, but I'm also glad that that's how your mom approached that. That is a great testimony. Thank you for sharing that with me. I appreciate that. It is possible, very much so. Let me go to this third point. Hopefully you've read it by now. Submission to human authority is not based upon respect for the person. I think respect has to be earned. I do. I think respect has to be earned. Look what it says. It's based on the position God has given them. I believe the Bible is very clear that God puts the kings and the kingdoms and the leaders and leadership into position. I believe that. That's what the Bible says. I believe it. I don't have to respect the person. I don't have to agree with the person. Okay? But I have to understand that God has put them in that position. I think that is so valid for today, by the way. So valid for today. You know, David's a tough character to follow. So I was thinking about Jesus this week, and I was thinking about his life. I was thinking about, especially at the end of his life when he was arrested and charged with blasphemy, a charge that he was innocent of, by the way. The different trials that they took him to, the dark rooms that they locked him into, the scourge that was given to him, a beating that is beyond our comprehension, to be dragged up a hillside, being mocked and beaten along the way, to see your family on the roadside, to watch him go through everything that he did, for him to be put on the ground, to have nails put in his hands and his feet, and a crown of thorns beat down upon his head, and then basically to be dropped in a hole in the ground. At any point, he could have enacted revenge. I mean, he didn't have to jump off the cross to do it either. He could have simply spoke a word and wiped out Pontius Pilate, Caiaphas, the high priest, all those that voted against him and wanted Barabbas instead. He didn't take revenge. He said words like, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." Maybe you can't follow David. Maybe we can follow Jesus instead, right? We are Christians, right? Christ-like. This is a tough area. It's a hard one. Hope it's something that we'll think about this week.